I assumed my wife Lisa would be happy when I told her I didn't have to work all week. I am a heavy equipment mechanic, and unfortunately end up working long hours. Lisa had a 3-day vacation planned with her sisters at Lake Winona. They usually rent cabins and families spend 3 days swimming, hiking, and enjoying a campfire. I had already told my wife that I couldn't come, and she seemed to understand. It was the middle of the week. I make good money, especially on overtime. I missed most of these walks, so I was really glad when I could get some rest. Hi, dear. Good news. This time I can join you guys. That's great, Bob. I'm sure the kids will appreciate it and you'll have fun, too. If you don't mind, I'll take a sports bike with me. There are a few designated trails there that I'd like to try. I'll only do this if you don't mind. I don't want to create any problems. This is good. There are a lot of mountains in Lake Winona, and you should try them out. Enjoy your life. Lisa prepared dinner while I went to prepare the motorcycle. It wasn't actually an off-road motorcycle. It was a 2-stroke engine that was street legal, but could be used off-road if you didn't get too hung up on it. I haven't had many opportunities to use it at home. Dinner was ready about the time I finished. We usually ate together every evening. Lisa and I were married for 12 years. We had 3 children. Tammy was 11, Josh was 8, and Terry was 7. We had a nice little frame house with a big mortgage, and the Connor family was doing great. After dinner was finished, the kids settled down in front of the TV, and I took a shower. Lisa was finishing up something on the computer when I stopped by to get my trail maps. I noticed that she quickly deleted something and logged out when I entered the room. I pretended not to notice anything while I was rummaging through the closet. She smiled and left the room, so I quietly pressed the shutdown cancel button. After making sure she was downstairs, I opened her mail. There was nothing in her inbox, and if there was, I was sure she would have deleted it. Just in case, I looked through the deleted mail. Lisa was a very careful person, especially when it came to her email. I never asked her about this. She usually deleted everything twice. There was never any record of her incoming or outgoing mail. This time, however, she was in a hurry, and I noticed that she deleted the file but did not delete the deleted file itself. Here it is. Plans have changed. Bob will come with us. You can still come, but I'll ask Katie to put you in the last house. We can spend time together because he'll be riding his motorcycle. See you later, LK. Message sent to dthompson@zebra.net. This was not good. Who the hell is D. Thompson and why did he come to our family meeting? What did Lisa's sister Katie have to do with this? Lisa was washing some clothes that the kids wanted to take with them on an outing, so I pulled her high school yearbook off the shelf. It didn't take me long to find Don Thompson. There was even a photo of Lisa and Don together at prom. I've never been a very smart guy, and I've never been a very suspicious guy. I probably should have been like that. I thought that overall our marriage was going well. I met Lisa about 2 years after she graduated from high school. I was 3 years older than her and had a good job. After we dated for about 6 months, I asked her to marry me and she agreed. Now I was wondering why? If she dated this guy in high school and was still dating him, why the hell did she marry me? I made a good living, although I thought I was never very ambitious. I worked hard for my family. I could care less about myself. I always thought it was worth it for them, but now I wasn't so sure. I never liked children, but I loved my children. I would do anything for them, simply because they were mine. I was a very caring father. The weekend promised to be interesting. The children wasted no time and went down to the lake. I ended up unloading everything, including the motorcycle. Lisa's sister Katie was there with her 4 children. The younger sister, Cora, was divorced and had 3 children. Kathy's husband, George, did not arrive. It seemed like I would be the odd man out for the weekend, except for the extra guy who was supposed to be in the last cabin. After settling in, I noticed a dark green Durango parked at the last house. We all grabbed a quick bite, and I announced that I was going for a ride. I prepared the motorcycle and grabbed a video camera before leaving. The motorcycle was a noisy little sucker, and I was sure Lisa was counting on it, so she could be sure I wouldn't sneak back. I rode for about half a kilometer, let the bike idle for a while, and then turned it off. The walk back to the campsite only took about 10 minutes. Three sisters sat at a picnic table chatting while children were scattered all over the place. About this time, a tall, handsome guy, who I assumed drove a Durango, approached the table. All the girls greeted him warmly. After about 10 minutes, he got up and left. He walked around the cubicles and headed towards the locker rooms. I began to make my way forward when I saw Lisa get up from the table and head towards him. Don entered through the back door on the women's side so that no one would notice, and Lisa followed him a short time later. I quietly walked in from the other side and turned on the video camera. I didn't even remove the lens cap because there was nothing to look at. I made my way to the next wall and could hear them talking. "I'm really sorry, Don. I had no idea Bob was coming today. I will try to make amends. He'll probably be riding around on his motorcycle most of the time, so all we have to do is look after the kids." "It's okay, Lisa. I understand. I'm a little disappointed, but I'm sure everything will be great either way. They're going to have a little party at the cabins tonight. I'll sneak down to the lake and we can swim together like old times. Kathy will make sure Bob is occupied. I don't know if I can wait that long." "A stupid boy. Let's watch. I think I can take care of you a little so you can last until dark." I heard the sound of a zipper being unzipped and clothes being taken off. When Don started moaning, it became obvious that my wife was having a quickie. I listened closely and heard Lisa begin to giggle and then say, "Okay, Don, this will be enough for you until the evening. I need to get back to my sisters." I sat there stunned. I was heartbroken. But what the hell did I expect? I snuck around trying to catch her and succeeded. I guess I was disappointed that it even happened, but I knew it would happen. I stayed there for another 10 minutes after they left, trying to figure out what to do. It was damn depressing, and I hated being depressed. I didn't get any video, but I recorded 10 minutes of good audio on camera. I got back on the bike and then went on a long, hard ride. I needed something to cool down. It would have been so easy to meet Lisa face to face and figure everything out, but that just wasn't my style. I didn't really have a style. I simply didn't confront most problems. For 12 years, I thought I had a great marriage, and now I find out that I was just a provider for my wife and children. Necessary convenience. I spent most of the day exploring the area around the beach. There was a long, grassy slope leading down to the water's edge. The beach was narrow, with rocks and forest on either side. In the middle, about 15 meters from the beach, there was a fire pit. Lisa, Katie, and Cora took the kids on a hike to a local waterfall. I took the time to collect and arrange a lot of wood in the fire pit. I put some kindling in the bottom and neatly stacked some nice dry logs on the side. I found some cardboard that I could put on the bottom to make it easier to get started. There weren't many people on the site, so I didn't attract anyone's attention. I didn't notice Don anywhere. When everyone got back from their walk, I took Josh and Terry into the woods, and we cut up about 20 nice marshmallow sticks for baking. I told them to keep it a secret until tonight. They were delighted with this. I gave Tammy 2 large bags of marshmallows and again explained what we were going to do. Evening came and everyone gathered around the picnic area. We had a nice dinner and the kids were getting ready to leave for the day. Katie was very talkative and stayed close to me. She asked me to help her with some frivolous little things and was very friendly. I kept my eyes on Lisa, but tried not to be too conspicuous. Finally, the sun set, and there was only a little moonlight. There was an ongoing debate about what we were going to do for the rest of the evening, and ghost stories seemed to be winning by a small margin. Suddenly, I noticed that Lisa was gone, and Katie was standing very close to me. I received a very detailed explanation of how Katie's husband, George, remodeled their kitchen. She made great efforts to interest me, but my thoughts were elsewhere. In the end, I excused myself and went into the house to get a video camera. Since it was on the opposite side of the lake, Katie didn't seem too worried. It was too dark to take any video, so I didn't bother taking out my camera. I grabbed 2 Molotov cocktails and several wooden matches. Once I went behind the houses, I was able to walk down the slope to the beach without Katie seeing me. There was just enough moonlight for me to quietly move along the shores. As I got closer, I became quieter. I could see 2 figures in the water. There was a blanket on the grassy area near the beach. Lisa and Don left their clothes and underwear on the blanket along with 2 towels. I carefully lifted all 4 corners of the blanket and walked over to the fire pit. I poured 1 lighter can onto the wood and then put a blanket on top and added lighter fluid. With a quick movement, I threw the match onto the pile of fuel and jumped back. I was still too slow. I singed my eyebrows and the hair on my arm when the wood pile burst into flames. This served as a signal. Tammy and Josh jumped up and started screaming. Marshmallow roast! All to the fire! All the children ran down the slope towards the fire. I looked at the water and saw Lisa. The light from the fire reflected in the eyes of Lisa and Don as they looked at the surprise falling on them. I saw Katie at the top of the hill, and she looked like the world was about to end. The children quickly sat around the fire. Josh passed out the sticks, and Tammy took the marshmallows. Lisa tried to hide along the pier as I slowly walked out. I looked at her lover. "Hello, Don. I'm Bob, Lisa's husband. It's nice to finally meet you." He seemed flustered and didn't say anything. "Lisa, can I help you up the stairs so you can join your kids by the fire?" "No, damn it. Just come to the blanket and take our towels." "Sorry, honey. I'm afraid I used a blanket, towels, and clothes to start the fire. Great fire, isn't it?" "No, Bob, no. Why the hell did you do that? How are we going to get out of the water?" "I'm sure Katie will be more than happy to help you." "I'm going home." Katie passed me on the dock as I was leaving. I walked up the hill and no one even noticed I left. I took my jacket and videotape from the cabin. Using the valve stem tool from the tool bag, I removed the 4 valve stems from Lisa's SUV. She wouldn't be able to fix them until the next day. I took a pair of pliers and tried to open the faucet on Don's Durango, but I couldn't budge it. I ended up hitting it 3 times until it just broke off. The Durango wasn't locked, so I reached inside and took the registration number out of the glove compartment. I figured Lisa could have just taken one of her sister's cars, but I figured she'd wait until she got her own. I turned off my cell phone and rode my motorcycle out of the campground onto the highway. It was a long journey on an uncomfortable vehicle. I didn't go very far because I had to stop and fill the sucker and mix the gas and oil. At least it was late and the roads weren't too crowded. I leveled the car and started dropping kilometers. A green Durango drove past me at good speed, and I noticed some white fumes coming out from under it. About 10 miles down the road, he was stopped. Don Thompson leaned under the hood, trying to figure out what the problem was. I flew past unnoticed and headed to the next gas station. A bigger gas tank wouldn't hurt. After filling up, I drank a cup of coffee and took the Durango registration number out of my pocket. Don lived in Pottsville, which meant I could pull up right now and be there in less than an hour. Of course, after I got there, I had to find the address. It took another hour. He lived in a modest frame house south of town. I couldn't tell whether he owned the house or rented it. Anyway, I figured he wouldn't be home for a while, so I broke the window in the kitchen door and got inside. Don had a small computer area set up in his bedroom. I found a wrench in my desk drawer and removed the side of the CPU. I pulled out the hard drive and looked around for anything else that might be interesting. On the corner of the table lay a book like a CD album, which contained about 20 discs. I grabbed it and the hard drive and left. Less than 2 hours later, including another gas station, I was home. It was at this point that I was glad my truck had a big trunk. I was able to hide my clothes, computer, and some household items behind the seat. I collected a bunch of personal papers and documents and went to a motel on the other side of town. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to take a nap because tomorrow was going to be a busy day. No matter how tired I was, I still got up early. It took me a while to connect to Don's hard drive, but I finally did. Don appears to have saved all the emails he and Lisa wrote to each other. Most of them were saved in his document file, but many were still in his mail. I started reading them, but I didn't have much time. It would take me a whole day to read them all. I looked at a few here and there to get an idea of what's going on. They definitely had sex, but the emails weren't dirty. I didn't find a single place where they said anything derogatory about me. On the contrary, several comments have been made indicating just the opposite. Lisa commented on the great job I did installing the new kitchen cabinets and Don responded that he wished he could be as handy as I was. It was a little strange. Here were two people who cheated on me but in no way abandoned me. I was confused. The discs were another confusing story. There were no obscene pictures. There were many photos of them doing all sorts of things together, but not a single one that was obscene. In one of the photos, her hair was dark and short. This was when she was carrying Tammy. In the next shoot, her hair was brown when she gave birth to Josh, and then long and dark when she was pregnant with Terry. In all the photos, Don beamed like a proud father. It really hurt. It was time to hit the road. I did the usual rounds. First, I closed all bank accounts and credit cards. I quit my job and took all my vacation and sick pay. I cashed in my life insurance policies and canceled my cell phone service. I made arrangements to shut off the utilities at the end of the week. I was sure I would miss something, but I did my best. I stopped by the family doctor's office and asked the nurse to take a DNA swab with instructions to send the results to my lawyer. Then I went to the law office and filled out the divorce papers. I told Seymour not to give her anything and to only offer child support if the DNA test showed they were my children. At that moment, I had little hope. I left $2,000 in a checking account for Lisa and her children. I told her she could have the house, but she would have to make the payments herself. I left 2 signed powers of attorney in case he needed them. I signed 1 form to help her sell her house. Yuba City was a long way from Redding. I had enough money to support myself for a long time, but I knew I had to start working so I wouldn't go crazy. I was pretty sure I left some trouble behind me, including a breaking and entering charge in Schuylkill County. I had no idea what things I missed at home that I was legally responsible for, and I didn't care too much. I also wasn't very smart when it came to laying low. Registering my car, driver's license, and insurance would be good for a while, but eventually I would have to update my details and run the risk of being discovered. Bank accounts and employment could also cause problems. Every morning, gangs of men would gather at certain key intersections looking for the day's work. Potential employers would drive by and select those they wanted, paying them cash on an independent contractor basis. There was no SSN required or any forms to fill out. A day of hard work was rewarded with some untraceable cash. I didn't mind the work or the low pay, but I found myself unhappy that I couldn't talk to my work colleagues. I started learning a little Spanish and things got better. As a result, I became a permanent picker for the nut grower Foreman Sutter. They grew walnuts, almonds, hazelnuts, and pistachios. The work was challenging and didn't require too many brain cells from me. I slept well at night. About a month later, I borrowed a cell phone from one of the executives and called my lawyer. He handed Lisa the documents. She didn't want anything from me, but insisted on some support for the children. She did not provide him with any DNA test results. I told him that I would not pay child support for other people's children. Her parents and sisters helped her with expenses until she was able to find a job. She put the house up for sale. If all goes well, the divorce will be final in 4 months. Don Thompson did not file a report with Schuylkill County Police. I guess I didn't need to hide anymore. I spent my evenings reading emails and looking at photos from CDs. About 4 years ago, Lisa and Katie took a weekend cruise to Nassau. Lisa was on a cruise with Don Thompson, and Kathy was with a guy other than George, her husband. From the emails, I was able to find out that his name was Richard Witt. The photographs were not very pleasant to look at. It was obvious from the photographs that Lisa and Don shared the same cabin. I loved Lisa and would do anything for her. I had a hard time processing all the new information I was finding. How could I be so stupid? Sutter Nut Growers had 2 large tree shakers. One of them has been broken since I started working there, and today, the other one broke. The company had to call a specialist from Sacramento to fix them. They were going to cut the hours and send everyone home, so I asked the manager if I could take a look at it. It only took me about an hour to get it up and running. All my friends were happy because they had finished their work shift. I spent the rest of the day working on the second shaker and finally got it running around 7 p.m. Everyone else had left early, so Supervisor John Foreman offered to give me a ride home. On the way home, he offered me a permanent full-time job as an equipment repairman, which I immediately accepted. About a month later, I returned home from work to find a cheap rental car in my driveway. George Mitchell, Kathy's husband, found me. He was sitting on the porch and gave me a small smile as I approached the house. I wasn't really happy to see him, but I tried to be friendly. "How long did you wait, George?" "About 2 hours. I'd like a cold beer if you have it." I got us both some Fosters, and we sat on opposite sides of the Formica kitchen table. "What could be so important that you would fly almost 5,000 kilometers to see me, George?" "Lisa asked me to go, and her parents paid the cost of the tickets." "Okay, let's get started. First of all, what are you trying to achieve?" "I spent the whole flight trying to figure out the right approach to this." "Let me tell you something that not many people know about Katie and me. Does this concern?" Richard Witt? "Yes. I guess it wasn't as big a secret as we had hoped." I just smiled. "Bob, all 3 Spencer girls, Lisa, Katie, and Cora, wanted to have big families. It was important to them, and it was very important to their parents. We were married for 2 years and had bad luck. The test showed that I was the problem. I shot blanks, and Katie was fine. We did not want to adopt a child and could not afford artificial procedures. It took a long time, but we eventually agreed that we would try to find someone else to get Katie pregnant. I know it sounds strange, but we thought about it a lot. Richard has been my friend since high school. Katie dated him and had sex with him before she met me. He was one of the celebrants at our wedding. I liked Richard, so Kathy and I met with him to explain the problem. At first, he resisted and agreed only to some concessions." "Concessions?" "Richard said he would get Katie pregnant as many times as we wanted, but he wanted to be able to see her once a month and 1 weekend a year. Under these conditions, he was ready to help until he found a wife. All 4 of our children are Richard's. I was best man at his wedding about 3 years ago, and he hasn't seen Katie since." "What does this have to do with me and Lisa?" "The same thing, but in a different way." "I assume you're going to explain it." "Lisa and Don Thompson have been in love since junior high school. They had their entire life together planned out, except for one problem. Don was involved in a water skiing accident right after graduating from high school. He could still have sex, but he couldn't father children. Lisa was devastated. The most important thing in her life should have been her children. Don convinced Lisa that she should get married so she could have her own family, and they could remain close friends." "You mean fuck buddies?" "That's a rough way of putting it, Bob, but I think the answer is yes." I listened very carefully to what George said. Some of it sounded true, but most of it was nonsense. I decided to let him talk a little more. Lisa finally agreed, but asked Don to find her a husband. He didn't want anyone living in the Pottsville area, so he tracked down a friend in Reading, David Lipman. "I believe you worked on some of David's tankers." "Yes, Dave seemed like a good guy." "Well, they narrowed the search down to 3 guys, and Lisa chose you. She stalked you, forced you to marry her, and let you think it was your idea. You gave her a good home and a happy marriage, as well as 3 beautiful children. She tried to be a loving wife to you while maintaining her relationship with Don. Over the years, she became closer and closer to you and saw Don less and less. He and Katie both tried to set Don up with other girls, but he loved Lisa and wanted to maintain his relationship with her." George reached into his coat pocket and slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a DNA report. The letterhead read, "Schuylkill Science Laboratories." I expected to receive some form, but it was just a formal letter stating that I was the biological father of our 3 children. I looked at the report and looked at George. He didn't say anything. "Is that all, George?" "Fine." "Lisa cut off all contact with Don immediately after you left. She decided that it would be better for her and the children. She hoped that when Don disappeared from her life forever, you would reconsider the decision to divorce and return home." I had 2 more beers. I didn't say anything. I just sat there and stared at the paper. I couldn't believe this guy flew across the country on a plane to feed me this crap. Perhaps there was some truth somewhere, but I couldn't grasp it. I never understood why Lisa married me. And even after listening to George's bullshit, it didn't get any clearer. "What time is your flight back, George?" "I have to be at the Sacramento terminal by 8. I'll have just enough time to get there and return the rental car." I really appreciate you coming all this way to explain everything to me, George. You could probably do this over the phone, but I think face-to-face communication is more effective. Is there anything you want me to say to Lisa or the kids when I get home? I know she's hoping for some good news. She was really devastated when you left. I can't think about anything right now. Give them my best wishes and tell them I will be thinking about them. I walked George to the car. I could tell he was hoping for a little more of a reaction than he got. It was an interesting story, especially when he started by confessing his relationship with Katie. If everything he said was true, then I might want to reconsider the divorce, but there were too many holes in it. I felt a strong attachment to Lisa. We spent many wonderful years together, and I always considered us a team. Her obvious betrayal broke my heart. I'd like to fix it if I could. I was looking for more information and answers, and I wanted them to explain and improve the situation. I still couldn't believe that George had flown here for a 30-minute conversation. The next day, I called my lawyer. "Seymour, this is Bob Connor from California." "I don't hear from you often, Bob." "What do you need?" "First of all, have you ever received any official DNA paternity test results?" "Bob, I didn't receive anything. I asked Lisa 3 times, and each time she promised, but I still have nothing. I told her I would pay for the testing, but I don't think it made a difference." Lisa's brother-in-law gave me a letter from the Schuylkill Research Laboratories in Pottsville, which states that I am the father. Did you give them anything from my tests that they could use as a standard? I've never heard of this lab, and I still have your samples here in the office. I never gave them to anyone. Unless they did their own DNA test on your hair or nails, I have no idea what they were testing for. I'll deal with this. Anything else? Do you have anyone who could check on a guy named Don Thompson who lives in Pottsville? I can't help but think that knowing something about him might be important. I understand that the divorce is almost final, and I don't want to mess it up, but if I can stop myself from making a mistake, I want to do it. There shouldn't be a problem with that. Do I owe you money? There is still a good buffer in your account. I'll let you know if you come closer. About a week later, Seymour called me and told me that the Schuylkill Research Laboratory in Pottsville was a fake DNA laboratory and had been shut down by the government. He also told me that Don Thompson struggled through high school. He wasn't very bright and had trouble holding down a job. He had just been laid off from his last job as a fuel truck driver and was having trouble finding anything else in the Pottsville area. He was reported to be a pleasant man, but simply not very bright. That evening when I got home from work, Tammy, Josh, and Terry ran up to the truck. They attacked me when I tried to make my way to the porch where their mother was waiting. To what do I owe this pleasure? I felt that the children should be with their father, and since you did not want to return to Pennsylvania, I decided to bring them here. I've already rented a place across the river in Marysville. Why don't I send for pizza and we can get settled? The children spent the next hour telling me about their travels around the country. During the trip, they hardly stopped, but still saw a lot of new and exciting things. Lisa was quiet and just let the kids talk non-stop. I turned on the TV for them, and they began to slowly relax. Lisa and I cleaned up after a messy dinner. "Bob, I'm sorry it turned out this way. I was hoping George could explain it to you, but apparently he didn't do a very good job. The day after you caught Don and I together, I broke up with him. It was stupid of me to stay in the relationship for as long as it did. I had known for several years that our marriage was more important to me than my friendship with Don. We had been together for so long and so close that it was difficult to break those bonds. I'm sorry if this sounds stupid, but I don't know how else to explain it. I haven't seen Don since that day at camp, and I don't plan to see him again. I hope you understand that you are the one I love and want to spend the rest of my life with. You are the father of my children, and I want you to help raise them." I don't know what to say, Lisa. You took me by surprise. There are many things I don't understand and perhaps don't want to understand. It's good to see the kids again, and I hope I can help you with them. Right now, I don't feel comfortable enough to want to be in a relationship, but I'm open to working on it. Everything is fine. I understand your reluctance. I have a restaurant job scheduled to start next week in Marysville, I will have to work evenings and weekends. I would appreciate it if you could watch the kids while I work until I can get some things ready. I think it sounds tempting. Are you going to take them, or do you want me to pick them up? I'll leave them here and pick them up after I'm done. I just hope it won't be too burdensome. The arrangement seemed to work out perfectly. Needless to say, on the first day, I took DNA swabs from the mouths of each of the children and immediately mailed them to Seymour. Tammy was more forthcoming than usual and seemed concerned about the relationship between Lisa and me. I didn't want to drag my children into this mess and tried not to even mention the divorce. A letter arrived from George, and inside was a newspaper clipping and a note that simply said, "For your information." The clipping was a photo of Don in a soldier's uniform. He completed basic training and was sent to Bosnia for 2 years. I called Tammy. "Do you know this man?" I asked, pointing to the photo. "Certainly. This is Uncle Don, but we shouldn't talk to you about him." "Do you often see Uncle Don?" "We used to do this, but we could never tell you what we were doing. Otherwise, Mom would get angry." "Did you see him after I left?" "Yes." "Where?" "We mostly saw him in Chuck E. Cheese or something like that. He and Mom were talking while we were playing slot machines and stuff." "Did he ever stay at home?" "Just one time. This was a week before we left, and the day before he left for the army." "Tell me about it." "Okay, but I shouldn't do this. He came home by taxi. He told his mother that he had enlisted in the army and was leaving for Philadelphia the next morning. Mom started crying and hugging him. She was talking all sorts of nonsense. Josh, Terry, and I went into the house and watched TV while he and Mom talked. She cried a lot and said things I couldn't understand. We all went to bed and they were still talking. I came downstairs in the middle of the night to get a drink and he wasn't on the couch. The next morning I looked out the window and saw him getting into a taxi. Mom was still crying. That day she told us that we were going to California to see you. Don't tell your mom that I told you this, otherwise she will be very angry with me. Did your mother cry when I left? No. Everything was starting to fall into place. I don't think the newspaper clipping produced the results George hoped for. I was looking forward to getting back together with Lisa, but now I have doubts. I would have loved to share all the information I had with her and let her explain things, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was probably too much of a coward to start a dispute about fidelity with the woman I loved. I had no reason to believe that Tammy had lied to me, but what he told me contradicted what George and Lisa had said. It seemed pretty obvious who was lying. I did what cowards always do. I was sitting in the Seattle airport when my cell phone rang. "Dad, this is Tammy. Where are you?" "I'm at the Seattle airport, honey." "When are you going to come back home?" "Not earlier than in 10 months. I had to sign a contract to get this job and I'll be busy for a long time. Mom is very angry with me for telling you about Uncle Don. We leave to return to Reading as soon as she receives her last paycheck from the restaurant. I think she's mad at you too." "Tammy, I'm sorry if I got you into trouble with your mother. Just remember, you didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault, and don't forget that. I'll miss you. Josh and Terry will be missed too. I'm sorry you had to leave, but I think I understand. I love you, honey, and tell Josh and Terry that I love them too." I called Seymour after Tammy hung up. The DNA test results have arrived. None of the children were mine. This was yet another lie from George and Lisa. The divorce was supposed to be final in 2 weeks. I told Seymour that I would send money to support the children as long as no new problems arose. He agreed to handle it for me. It's damn cold in Prudhoe Bay, but at least the knife wound on my back is healing. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. Listening to the next one. Listening to the next one. Listening to the next one.